Today, I'm speaking with Louise O'Dalaigh. Louise is one of our clarity coaches and currently works in Northern Ireland in the NHS. Louise started in the health service as a nurse and is currently a senior manager leading services and has a real passion for improving quality and safety in the workplace. Louise also has a huge passion about looking after the staff that provide healthcare so that they can unlock their potential and give the best they can. And one of the interesting things about Louise is that she's a mum with four children. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you, Jamie.
And one of the places, as you may know, that I love to start these interviews is just by asking, what first sparked your interest in the principles behind clarity?
I think for me, Jamie, was a number of years ago, around 2010. I had a huge amount of work-related stress, and that's quite a while back ago now. And it was the first time in my life or my career that I got to a point that I couldn't cope, and I had to take time out of work at that time, which was really, really difficult for me. I ended up taking 3 months out. And the reason it was really difficult, it was the first time in my life that I hadn't been able to sort out everything because I had a history of being able to sort whatever was thrown in my direction. So I found that really tough. Went back to work and made some adjustments in life and was doing well for a couple of years. And then a couple of years later, I noticed that I was having more signs and symptoms in relation to stress at work.
Mm.
Went to see my GP again and went through another journey of, but didn't take time out of work this time. And while I was going to the GP, my GP was telling me that my work was making me sick and that I needed to think of a different career because I was a working mom with 4 kids, etc., and I work full time. But there was something in me that thought that this can't, my work is not making me sick. So I continued on and I started to read. So one of the things was at night was I never had trouble waking up in the night, but I had trouble getting off to sleep because my mind just never stopped. I would have thought about all the things that happened in the day, thought about the meetings that I was going to the next day, the meeting that happened last Tuesday, the meeting that would happen next Tuesday. So I found that I got great peace of mind by reading. And one of the first books that I read was Your Little Book of Clarity. And also a book by Shah Wasmond as well about something like Do Less, Get More. And a combination of those two really sparked my interest. And it became like a drug. I wanted to read more and more and more. And I found myself looking towards reading more. And I remember that a night at home saying to my husband, I asked him to put off the TV. He's a big sports fan. And I asked him to put off the TV because I wanted to talk to him. And I said to him, there's something in this. There's something in this that I'm hearing that I want to hear more. And I want to go across to London to do this workshop. I remember my husband saying to me, if you think there's something in it, go for it. And with that, he came with me because at that point, really in my life, I had hardly ever really went anywhere on my own. And to go to London on my own was just like a step too far. So we went to London, and Adrian, my husband, he would have spent his time playing golf in the day, catching up with friends. And it was a weekend boot camp. And I remember on the Sunday afternoon, and you were standing up at the front of the room, and you were talking about La La Land. And you were talking about, the only time that's real is now. The only time is now. And you said something like, look out the window, see that tree there? That's the only thing. We're creating that illusion of thinking. And the only time is now. The rest is made up in your head. When you're thinking about something in the future, when you're thinking about something in the past, it's La La Land. And with that, I was like a volcano. I started to erupt with emotion, is only how I could describe it. And I could find myself getting really, really emotional. And the tears started. And I remember people sitting around me. I was of course, the middle of a row, so I couldn't get out. Couldn't escape, couldn't get out. And I sat and I chortled and I was willing you to kind of stop, but at the same time wondering how in hell had I had this kind of, I suppose what I look back at now, a massive insight. When I thought back of all of this stress and pressure that I had been putting myself under by thinking it and recreating this in the moment. And that I was continuously replaying, and like a stuck record, I was continuously replaying it. And I remember you stopped, you paused for a break or whatever, and I went running to the back of the room. And I don't know to this day, but somebody come after me, some very kind lady come after me. I still don't know who it was, because I was, really kind of crying at that point. And she was really, really kind. And I come home to my husband that evening afterwards. And as we came back the next day on the plane, I remember him saying to me, if nothing else ever happens, the fact that you've got that out of this weekend, has been absolutely massive. So that sparked my interest even further, and it just went from strength to strength. And interestingly, where I was in my journey of health, I suppose, at that point when I went to London, things had got so bad with my work-related stress. About a year or so before that, I had been put on medication for, I'm not really sure whether it was anxiety or depression, but something I'd been put on. I never really went into the detail with my GP. But things had got so bad that I was crying all the time. And within 6 weeks of me attending that workshop in London, I was off the medication. And also, as I sit here now, and that's years later, I can honestly say that I never, ever will get to that place, seeing what I have saw now for myself.
And Louise, just for someone who's listening, who's like, hang on a second. So you were at a course with Jamie, and he was talking about La La Land, and then you burst into tears and had this eruption of emotion. And then 6 weeks later, you're off medication, and you know now that whatever happens, you're never going to be in that kind of stress again. You missed a bit. Like, what did you see for yourself that, another way of putting it, Louise, is as you sit here right now, what is it that lets you know? What is it that gives you such confidence and certainty that can have you say, like what you said, that you're never going to go back there, and that's now informing what you do actually as well? I happen to know. What lets you know that? What did you see for yourself?
I suppose what I saw for myself and what I continue to see for myself is that I am always okay. That in any given moment, in any present moment, I am always okay. And that when I can get into thinking about the future or thinking about the past, that is not about who I really am. But when I'm in the present moment, any present moment, even if it's the most turbulent, difficult time, that I know in any present moment I'm okay.
I love the way you put that, Louise, and I've never heard anyone say it quite like that. What I heard you say is, if I get caught up in thinking about the future or the past or something outside of the present moment, that's not who I really am. Now, who I am is this one who's experiencing the present moment. Never heard it put like that, and I love it. I love it. That's really, yeah, I love what you've seen there. So now you have a passion for sharing this with other people in your work. So one of the things I love about you and how you're doing this is you're sharing it right where you already were. It wasn't like, okay, I need to go and do something else in order to share it. You're sharing it in your workplace and impacting the people you're with. How did that start?
I suppose it's just conversations. At times I notice that I have some frustration because I'd like to be sharing it a lot more. But this is the health service, and new concepts and ideas is sometimes not as easy to embed. So how I'm sharing it is conversations with people, sparking their interest. I did the Clarity Coach training with you, so under the umbrella of coaching. So people will reach out to me and have conversations and maybe ask to meet with me with regards to having a coaching conversation. Say, for example, if they've got stress in their workplace or they're going for a new job and they want a bit of mentor support. And then through conversations, I will point them back as part of that conversation as to, where their experiences are coming from. and around. So I would talk a lot with staff and colleagues around, where their thinking is coming from, and where they feel that their experiences outside of them is causing their experience. So one of the other biggest insights I had was that thought and feeling connection, that our feelings are a derivative of where our thinking is in any moment. That was huge for me. And that is huge, I see, in the health service, that health service staff still very much see that all of this outside of them is causing their feelings of stress, overwhelm, concern, etc. Whereas our feelings are a direct correlation. It's the one side of the coin about where our thinking is in any moment, which causes that kind of feeling to happen within a person. So I suppose I'm very lucky that I'm currently on a fellowship program, an international fellowship program, with some very senior people that work in healthcare. So a lot of consultants, pharmacists, lead nurses, etc. And I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago, even to do just a short 15-minute talk to them about where their experiences have come from. And I use the topic of stress because that's on the tip of everyone's tongue in healthcare at the moment. It is an epidemic, burnout and stress-related absences for our healthcare workers. So I talked to this team of this cohort of about 35 people, and I used the snow globe, and that simple conversations with people actually really touches people about how their minds are like a snow globe, and the more that we shake it up, the more we can't see the picture. And that really lands with people, and then they can really relate to that. So it's, I suppose, how I'm sharing it is through conversational opportunities in the health service. I'm also part of faculty for the junior doctors program, the quality and safety program for the organisation. So a few weeks ago, I got an opportunity to do a talk about resilience with the junior doctors. Again, I pointed to snow globe analogy and a number of analogies to help point them back to where their experiences are coming from. And even when I'm saying that to you, it kind of makes me smile, because 5 years ago I would have done none of this. I just wouldn't have taken the opportunity, whereas now I would.
And that's really, really an interesting thing to hear, Louise, because what do you, when you say 5 years ago, I wouldn't have done any of this, I wouldn't have taken the opportunity, what is it that you now see or have realized that's allowing you to take these opportunities that would have gotten in the way before?
So before, I would have created such a story probably linked with it. So for example, if I was asked to do for example, a few weeks ago when I did that with the fellowship, I would have had huge imposter syndrome around that. Oh my gosh, I can't do that. Who do I think I am? What will they think of me? And I would have created a real story about, I'm not able to do that. Who do they think they are? Whereas now how I see it is that is all a story created up in my head. That just because I create that story in my head, it doesn't mean it's true. I was linking with a guy in New York that I met through the First Glass Wing program only last week, and we were talking about this. And it's really about that little voice and the big voice in our heads. And the little voice, that little chatterbox that kind of gives us a hard time and points us to about what we can't do and what we are not able to do. And then just listening for the voice beyond that little voice that actually is about who we really are and what we really can do and what we're capable of. And what we're capable of is absolutely putting that little voice to sleep.
And what I hear in what you're saying is that as a result of just knowing what's true, you're able to say yes to these things. How are people receiving it when you talk about resilience or talk about stress and Because I can imagine if you're talking to, pharmacists and senior consultants and that sort of thing. I know for a lot of people, Louise, they have a whole bunch of, oh, but, what if it isn't backed up by, 100, double-blind studies or that sort of thing. But the health service is somewhere where people are very, evidence-based and that sort of thing. How are you finding they're receiving what you're sharing?
Well, just case by case. I had a fantastic opportunity to speak to one of the pharmacists on this fellowship a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
And just one call, she messaged me to tell me that because she had started to see it for herself, because this is insight based, this is very much, and my fellow colleagues in the NHS, initially they want to get evidence and they want to see. So one of the things I start out with is just let this land and don't try and work this out. And then just don't try and overthink it, but just watch and see how it pops up in your life.
Mm.
So I had this one call with this lady one evening, and we talked about a couple of things, just whatever she wanted to talk about.
This is the pharmacist?
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
pharmacist. And then I got the most beautiful message about a week later saying that her stress levels had gone from 8 out of 10 to 2 out of 10, just from what she was seeing for herself. And she feels reborn. She feels that this has opened a completely new world to her that she hadn't realized.
That's so cool to hear. And there are two things that I'm hearing in this. I love what you're saying to people, Louise, about because people are evidence-based. So you're kind of saying, look for the evidence in your own life. You sort of pointing them to that. But also what I can tell just by the way you've described it, she had insights. I don't know what her specific insights were, but it will have been something about who she really is and where her experience is coming from. And she's seen something, and what she has realized has taken her stress levels down from 8 to 2, which is incredible. And saying she feels reborn, that's pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And another example that just when you were saying that came to mind was another medical physician that I had been working with as well. Um, she was able to, for her insight was based around, she can remember as a child when she was free spirited and didn't have a lot of on her mind and was very happy within herself.
Mm.
And then her insight was she realized how she had layered all this, what she should and had to do. And actually, she could really relate to that childlike feeling about, actually, I've made this up.
Mm.
I can do whatever I want to do.
Mm. It's beautiful. And that, like you say, that is insight and realization that makes that possible. So what's it like for you? Like if you compare now to 5 years ago, like you said, I wouldn't have done any of this 5 years ago. Now that you're doing this, you're giving talks to your colleagues, you're doing one-to-one work with your colleagues, and you're getting that kind of feedback from people. What's that like for you?
Well, it's hugely humbling,
Mm.
um, to be able to be part of somebody's journey, to just create a space to allow them to have that. So that is absolutely beautiful. I went into the health service as a nurse to help look after people and care for people. And this for me is very aligned with that original kind of purpose of going into the health service. I, for myself, never knew there was this sense of inner peace
Mm.
um, before I started this journey for myself. Um, as I said to people recently, this is a fairly simplistic understanding, but it's simple only when you see it for yourself.
Mm.
So just being able to, and like, don't get me wrong, I don't walk around in the health service on a day-to-day blissful, big smiley face and no kind of thinking about pressure and stress, etc. It fleets in, but it doesn't last.
Mm.
It doesn't hang on. It doesn't create a story. It doesn't pull me back like a heavy rucksack.
Mm.
Because if I find that it is, and I just ask myself, and a famous line of yours that I often quote is, where is your experience coming from? And when I just ask myself that question, it's just like the the bubble just bursts,
Mm.
and the stress bubble just bursts, and it just dissipates.
Mm. And in a way, that question even is just a metaphor for looking in the direction of who we really are and where our experience is coming from, rather than, because I've met some people who go, oh Jamie, I got stressed and I just told myself, you're feeling you're thinking, you're feeling you're thinking. But that doesn't really, it's more be having the, I love that you use the word humbling. It's having the humility to look away from what's being created and towards that which is doing the creating. It's very, very uh, liberating, knowing that we can look in that direction at any time.
Yeah.
Mm. How is this? You mentioned that you're a mum to 4 children. How has this made a difference in your family and home life?
A huge difference in my family and home life. For one, mum can admit that she's wrong,
Hmm.
and recognize that when I get lost in my head, etc., that I have the ability to say, gosh, I kind of lost it there earlier.
Hmm.
My children as well, we have 4 children, they're at different ages, but my younger children, I can see a huge difference in them in comparison even to my older children when they were that age,
Hmm.
about them seeing for themselves. And I had the really fortunate opportunity about 18 months ago, 2 years ago maybe, that I worked in the local school and done a program for the children. Just did it as on a volunteering basis, just as part of kind of supporting the local community. And the children then that I worked with, I did a period of like about 4 weeks that I went in on a fortnightly basis and talked about where their experiences are coming from. And I had some lovely insights with the children in the classroom. And one of the things that we talked about, and my children still do it, is we talked about a traffic light system and about red being where is your experience coming from. Red was to stop, red is to stop, and then orange is where is your experience coming from. And then when you connect those two, green to go. So quite often, if I'm maybe a little cross with my children, which of course happens the odd time, say for example, the room's not tidy and I'm on their case, get your room tidy. My children now will say to me, so what color is your traffic light, Mum?
Yeah, right. They're whipping out the traffic lights. What ages are your kids?
The twins are 10, and then the older are 20 and 18.
And what age were the kids at the school that you were working with?
So I was at one point I was in the about 8 to 9 year old.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it's really heartening for me to hear that, because my kind of vision, what I call awakened humanity, is the first generation of children born to adults who already see this understanding. And I've had that vision for like the last 10 years. But the thing I suddenly realized is that there are children growing up all over the place who are being made aware of this understanding and living with parents and teachers and adults who are seeing the truth of this for themselves, and who are living in the feeling of this and sharing that. And it's so beautiful to hear that. Just talking about the going in to work with the school, you said you did that a couple of years ago. How did that come about? How did you end up going in there and working with the school kids?
So as it happened, I was at the parents teacher meeting talking to the principal about the children, and it was from the community around the WOW project. And I had shown an interest in that, which was the Web of Wellbeing. And then I just offered the teacher, she was asking me what was I doing. This is a very small local school, and our older children have gone to it and are younger. So I think by the time we're finished, we'll have been going 17 consecutive years to parents teacher meetings.
Wow. That's a lot of parents teacher meetings.
Exactly. So I built a relationship with the school. And first, how it happened was I went and spoke to the team of teachers first after school one afternoon and talked to them about this understanding and about how their experience and where they were coming from, etc. And that was hugely rewarding. And then it was just a natural, I said, you know, if you're interested, that I would be willing to come into the school. So she was really keen to get that experience. And so I did it on 2 occasions, with one classroom one year and then a different classroom the next year. And just went in for about, as I say, 4 sessions with each of the classrooms, and just played and had some fun. And the kids, yeah, as I say, we had a couple. I remember telling a story in the classroom to it one day, and this little kid, and probably he was maybe one of the truants of the class, let's say. And I could notice that he was really interested. And I was telling the story about that we're all born into life like a bowl of light. And sometimes as we get older and we grow, stones can get put into our bowl and it can dull our light a little bit. But the light is always there. And sometimes a lot of stones can get put into the bowl, but the light will always be there. And at any point, we're in a position that we can hew out the stones and the light never, never goes away, and it's always there. And I had told this story and I'd asked the children in the class, had they any questions or did they want to ask anything? And this little boy put up his hand and he says, so you mean to say, he says, we never ever need batteries for it? And it just was a magical moment for me and for that child at that particular time, about what he had saw for himself.
That's beautiful. And the thing that you keep pointing back to, Louise, is that this is insight based, that it's what people are saying for themselves. And while obviously you've got a lot of wisdom guiding you in how you're talking to people about this and how you're listening and all that sort of thing, it's clear to me that it's clear to you that the stuff that's going to do something for them is what's going to arise from within them, what they're going to see about who they really are and where their experience is coming from. So that's beautiful to just hear you keep pointing back to that. What have you realized for yourself about kind of how to share this with others? Like, I know it's not a how-to per se, but it's clear just listening to you, I'm like, oh, Louise has already seen a lot about sharing this with other people. What are some of the things that are kind of informing you as you're sharing this with others?
I suppose the thing I'm seeing the most is so conversational based. And it's interesting because it's amazing how when you just see yourself open to conversations, how people actually start sharing information with you. And that just leads to another conversation. I suppose if a couple of years ago when I had so much insights for myself that I wanted to really tell the world really quickly. And one of the things that I do find quite entertaining at times even as well is I forget that I didn't see this a few years ago. And I forget sometimes that people in my everyday around me in my workplace, etc., haven't saw what I've saw for myself. And there's sometimes that for myself thinking, actually, yes, remember when you didn't see this, which has been a huge thing for me in the last couple of years, is noticing that. So I suppose it's taken the opportunity of just whenever the conversation comes, and also checking with people that they do want to maybe have a further conversation or explore it a little bit more, rather than, I remember about maybe 6-8 months into the journey and I'd had a lot of insights and I was in the home and I was like shoving it down everyone's throat at home.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my family saying to me, will you please stop saying that?
Yeah.
Because I was like force feeding it. So one of the things for me is just stepping back and seeing, you know, where people are at and letting them. And I suppose one of the sayings I heard on the fellowship program in the first residential weekend we were all, you can only play the ball where the monkey drops it.
Hmm.
And
What does that mean to you?
so depending on where people are at. So if somebody has a conversation with me, and I can relate back to maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with one of the medical staff, and the conversation then developed and more about me listening
Mm,
and listening and listening. And then the conversation emerged to a very different place.
mm,
And as a result of that, we have planned to have a further conversation. So for me, it's about that real listening to see where the ball is dropping and then
mm.
taking it from that particular place.
That's beautiful. And what I'm hearing, Louise, is it's not like you have a pre-prepared, here's what I need to tell them and here's what needs to happen. You're listening, you're connecting, you're seeing where they're at and seeing how far they're carrying the ball and where it's dropped and then taking it from there. That's beautiful. And you mentioned earlier that you started as a nurse and it was caring that got you into this and you didn't realize that this was another way, this was possible, what you're doing now. What are your you know uh hopes, dreams, uh ambitions, visions? What are you I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what are you seeing as possible for this, where you are? And you've already made such a great start with it. What are you seeing as unfolding?
I suppose what I'm seeing and hopeful for that will unfold is that more and more people get to see this for themselves
Mm,
and spare the suffering. When I reflect back of the suffering that I went through,
mm,
that I created for so long, and when I look around me and see fellow colleagues suffering themselves, my hope is that the more people that sees this for themselves and can have an impact themselves and then impact people, that then that will spare human suffering and allow people to, and I suppose I'm particularly around people in the health service, that allows them to actually give more of what they want to give
mm.
rather than holding themselves back because they're suffering themselves.
That's beautiful. Louise, where can people find out more about you or connect with you if they want to reach out to you?
So I do, I do have a website actually.
Uh-huh.
I set it up because it seemed to be part of the game at one point. So I do have a website which is louiseodalaigh.com, um, that people can connect with me through that, and my email address is on that.
Oh,
Um,
we'll put a link in the show notes to that.
and I'm also in Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and I run a small Facebook coaching group as well, that I do as well. But again, that's just all about me kind of helping to share the understanding. So yeah,
Beautiful. And what's your Twitter handle if someone wants to reach out to you there?
I think it's oh now you've asked me. I think it is. Let me see. I think it's at Louise. Let me see. Twitter handle. What would it be? It would be at Louise O'Dalaigh. Quite straightforward.
Okay, just spell it out for anyone who's listening.
So it would be at LouiseOdalaigh.
Thank you so much, Louise. It's lovely to listen to you and to connect with you and talk with you and just to hear what you're up to. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and thanks for the opportunity to do so.
Oh, it's wonderful to speak with you.